Welcome back to the Knuckle podcast, episode 52. Related to what I was talking about in the previous episode, about trying to be more consistent, I actually don't really have anything specific to talk about other than one thing. I don't know how long that's going to go. So I might just call this episode Mental Pushups. Not like I don't want to do this, just kind of lacking the material lately. Been busy fixing my house and working. So I haven't really been indulging, I guess, in the extracurricular activities I normally do. Probably reading less stuff than I normally do. I don't read a lot, but I guess I read a lot of little articles on the internet and whatnot, watch different things. So that's kind of left me with a bit of a gap lately, but got to practice to get better no matter what. The only thing I really wanted to talk about today, and it'll probably be pretty short. Website, moosesnookerpodcast.wordpress.com. We're on iTunes and Stitcher. We got links to other crap there. Twitter, I guess I could start using that. I don't, though, really only automatically post the podcast link, but, follow us if you want. So the only thing I really been thinking about lately, in the wake of the Orlando shooting, is kind of gun legislation in general. Well, that's not true. That's not really what I've been thinking about. I do think we should do something, but I don't know what. I mean, I'm not an expert as far as what kind of laws would make a difference or not. I do think not allowing people on the no-fly list is kind of a no-brainer. I don't know why that one's so difficult, but people do have issues with how the list is made, so I can kind of see that, but to me that's more of, hey, let's fix how people get on there, not don't block people on it from getting guns, because they're essentially suspected terrorists, But I keep hearing this same thing over and over again. People mostly on the right. Actually, as far as I know, everyone I know who said this would be on the right. That, they're coming to take our guns, and I use them to defend myself. Which is an interesting idea. Wanted to read the Second Amendment if you give me a minute, because I kind of have a little idea here. So it says, idea. The Second Amendment of the United States reads, the United States Constitution reads, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to carry and bear arms shall not be infringed. So, I guess I could start with what I first said. People saying they want to use it to defend themselves. Which I do not agree with. I do not necessarily buy that premise. And the reason is, how many people practice with their gun regularly? I spent my whole life doing some type of martial art. I have no idea, over 10 years doing Taekwondo. I want to say it was like 13 or 14. Can't remember. It's a long time. I know it was more like 50. What the hell is that? Sorry, I'm hearing some weird noise on my end. There, I think I fixed it. It's probably 13 or 14 years. And I really haven't thrown kicks in the sense of actively practicing that in probably about 5 years. Trust me, I'm going somewhere with this. And I know just based on my skill previously and how my body feels now, movement wise, I guess you could say, because it did make a difference. You become more flexible and you kind of have strength in that flexibility, which I don't feel like I have now. But the point is, I know I couldn't do it as well as I could before. I'm only using this in terms of skill to a skill. I'm not saying everyone should just be more trained hand to hand and then you wouldn't need guns. It's not the argument I'm making. I'm just making a skill comparison to a skill comparison. Say if I was really good at knitting, you know. But I know, excuse me, since I haven't used that skill regularly, it is, you know, it's not nearly as good as it was when I stopped doing it. And that was even just doing it twice a week for 2 hours, I think. So 4 hours a week, right? And that's just kicking. And I could definitely hurt somebody doing that, hurt a lot of people. I'm not pretending like I'm a badass or invincible. It's a realistic thing. I did it for, you know, I don't say I'm a master, but I'm got to be approaching the 10,000 hours, you know. How long do you have to do something to become a master? I think it's Malcolm Gladwell says 10,000 hours. But the point is, you know, it was something I was proficient in. I practiced it regularly and I noticed a decline from not doing it. So this idea that everyone says, you know, I want a gun to defend myself. Sorry. I know this kind of stuff that mowed the lawn and got a bunch of shit in it. I don't know what, it was kind of oddly somehow wet and dry at the same time. Anyways, I'm gonna go blow my nose. Hold on. Sorry. All right. Sorry about that. Hope we all stop so much. Anyways, I was saying, so my skill declined. I just noticed that, right? So people have this idea, I have a gun, I'm going to defend myself. Well, how often are most people practicing? Once a week? Once a month? Once a year? And that's just shooting, right? How many people have somehow simulated waking up from a dead sleep, grabbing a gun wherever you have it, and accurately firing it? I'm going to guess it's almost nobody. I'm not saying there's nobody, but it's very small percentage. Like, you obviously can't, you know, unless you're some kind of crazy end of the world, have your own bunker thing, like you have some kind of random alarm thing set up so when you're goes off randomly, so you just wake up and practice that skill. But I mean, let's just say, how often have you practiced shooting a gun and you're going to use it to defend yourself? You know, how many people do that? A lot of people own guns, and I'm not saying there aren't a good percentage of people who, well, not a good percentage. I'm going to say it has to be, well, this is just completely bullshit. Has to be is the wrong word. It's got to be, in my opinion, less than 50%. I'll say maybe a quarter of gun owners practice pretty regularly. Something along the lines as far as just skill training. Not going hunting, because that's kind of different, but just skill training, making sure you have the ability to fire a gun quickly, accurately, under high stress. You know, I'm going to say it's a quarter or less of gun owners. And that's just training accuracy. You know, like I was saying, training essentially that you're in a sleeping position, like lying down, and then you jump up, grab a gun, and fire it accurately. I don't think anybody does that. So people always say, I have the right to have a gun, you know, Second Amendment, right to bear arms. But it also says, as part of a well-regulated militia. Now, we don't really have militias now, so people will say, well, there you go, you know, you're not part of a militia. You shouldn't, you know, it's different. Back then it was because we didn't have a standing army, which I can understand the argument of that, but the hell was that beep sound? Huh. I don't know what the hell that was. Oh, let me know I was at 10 minutes. Damn, I never noticed that before. That's weird. Sorry. What was I saying? Shit, what the fuck was I saying? I do not remember exactly. Oh, part of a militia. We don't have militia now. Right. But it says, to defend the state. So let's assume... Well, let's not assume. Let's say you have that right. You have the right to defend your free state. Now, in this case, I do believe the context within that means the people, not the U.S. government as far as state goes within the wording. So they're saying you have the right to defend yourself. So we have this idea that we have this right to defend ourselves. And that because of this, that means we were allowed to have guns according to the Second Amendment. No argument here. Let's say that's 100% correct. But within the context of that, it says well-regulated militia. We don't have militias, so how would one essentially be well-regulated now? And I believe that's practice. You have to be a responsible gun owner, and I don't think a lot of gun owners are. Not in the sense that they're leaving loaded guns around, and we do hear these stories about kids shooting themselves, but I think that's a small amount. Very, I have no idea the numbers, but I think when I looked it up, it was very low, like 31 or something, which is still sad, but let's not lump those people in with everyone. And so by irresponsible, I mean not practicing, well regulate yourself. Well, what does that entail? You have to be disciplined. Is that once a month you go shooting? Once a week? Are you training under high stress for distance? Are you practicing shooting in low light conditions? Because, people have this idea too, like, oh, I need something like AR-15, say, if 5 or 6 dudes come up to my house and I have to defend myself. What? Why are 5 or 6 dudes coming up to your house? I got news to you. If they're that well organized, where there's 5 or 6 dudes, they're a lot more trained than you, and you could have all the fucking guns you want. It ain't gonna matter. So this is really, you're defending against one person or maybe a team of burglars, 2 people breaking into your house. And it's going to be at night, because if it's during the day, you probably wouldn't even need a gun. You'd just say, hey, what the fuck are you doing in my house? You know what I mean? Then they'd run. People in general don't want to get arrested and don't want to fight. There are exceptions, which is why you have the gun. But it's probably going to be in a lower light situation. So how often have you tried shooting your gun with less visibility? Many people have probably not done that as well. These are just... It's not unreasonable to want to have a gun. I heard I forget his name. I want to say it's Wesley Clark Jr., and he's on the Young Turks. His dad is a pretty well-known general, if I'm remembering his name correctly. And he said, realistically, you don't need anything more than a revolver, a shotgun, and a bolt-action rifle, which I believe is true. Because with the revolver, you could defend yourself. You're going to have, depending on the revolver, 6 or 8 shots. Well, you could even have 5 in some of them. Actually, I didn't even know if there's any 8-shot revolvers. I could have just made that shit up. That doesn't sound correct at all. But, and bolt action, for those of you who don't know, that's not saying like some old school World War I gun, like, get a Ruger 30-06. I think it's called the American rifle. That's a good general hunting rifle, and it's bolt action. You still have a clip in the bottom, but it's just not this rapid fire. and you can shoot a pistol quickly enough to defend yourself. Or not a pistol, a revolver. That was kind of his point too, you know. With a lot of these handguns, you could shoot them as fast as an AR. You have less bullets, but you can have some of these double stacks that hold, I don't know, it's either 13 or 15. I don't remember the number right now, but that's quite a few bullets. And if you become proficient and you had extra clips, you could load that pretty quick. That was kind of his point, you know. It's not so much get rid of the AR platform. He's saying the semi-auto is the issue. I don't really know where I was going with that. Sorry. I kind of agree with him on the revolver, bolt action, and shotgun. I think you can reasonably defend yourself with those things if you're properly trained, which is kind of my whole point of this. You know, well regulate yourself, if that makes any sense. That was really all I had today. Moose Knuckle Podcast at WordPress.com, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.